the Americans didn't know of.
The National Institutes of Health outside Washington, D.C. was just beginning to research AIDS. In the field of cancer research, Dr. Robert Gallo was quickly becoming a star. At the time, he was head of the prestigious National Cancer Institute. Dr. Gallo had made an important discovery, a human retrovirus. This virus sneaks into the body's genetic code and reproduces itself in what are called the T cells of the immune system. Gallo named the virus the human T-cell leukemia virus, or HTLV, which caused a type of leukemia. Now he wondered whether it might be linked to AIDS.
I began thinking that AIDS might be due to a retrovirus because, well, our lab was working on human retroviruses, the leukemia virus HTLV1, the leukemia virus HTLV2, and we had quite a bit of expertise on the biology of the T-cell.
In the winter of 1982, his theory appeared in an article which was read in Paris by Dr. Leibovich.
And that's where it struck me. Of course, it had to be a retrovirus. And when that happened to me, I was thunderstruck. I called Robert Gallo, didn't know me. He had this strong, low voice and said, "All right, what do you have? What do you want?"
I don't remember the details of the telephone call. I remember vividly his visit to our laboratory and his excitement. He knew this laboratory was working on AIDS with one finger. And we still had a lot of cancer research going on. And how important was AIDS? I didn't know. We work a little bit, more. I think Leibovich was trying to light a fire here to say, really get involved. So he also was a catalyst.
In exchange, he gave me some preliminary information that was supportive of the retrovirus hypothesis, which I conveyed back to France.
The Pasteur Institute still basks in the glory of the man who discovered penicillin. The institute, however, hadn't shown much interest in AIDS. One day, Dr. Leibovich and some colleagues persuaded their cautious chief, Luc Montagnier, to conduct a retrovirus test.
We had some phone calls at the end of December 1982 about the possibility to look for retrovirus in samples of patients with AIDS. And so there will be a biopsy on January 4.
And so a small piece of lymph node was removed from the neck of a young man dying of AIDS and cautiously transported from one side of Paris to the other. With so much at stake, this sample was about to represent a major achievement in French science. As luck would have it, the package arrived during lunch.
She couldn't find anybody in my lab. Everybody was gone for lunch. I was not there. I was at the course. And she went to the other lab. She didn't find anybody either.
The sample finally ended up in the laboratory of Drs. Claude Sherman and Francois Barré-Sinousset. Dr. Barré-Sinousset had learned how to track down a retrovirus at Dr. Gallo's lab in Washington. The technique involved waiting several weeks to give the virus's cells a chance to multiply. But this time she couldn't wait.
Since we did not really know what we were looking for, we decided to look every 2 or 3 days if it was something coming out from the cells.
After 3 patient weeks, she was rewarded. The unique telltale sign of a retrovirus appeared, an enzyme in the sample fluid called reverse transcriptase. But then she noticed something that shouldn't be happening with the retrovirus. Instead of multiplying, the cells were dying.
Since the cells were dying, the virus was disappearing at the same time. So we said, my God, we had something and we are losing these things.
Entonces fíjense aquí, ¿no? Aquí un ejemplo. A partir de, tienen un paradigma, un cuerpo de investigación, un programa de investigación para los retrovirus. Lo encuentran, ¿no? Encuentran el retrovirus, pero la gran anomalía es que no se comporta como se comportaban, y entonces el problema es que como se muere tan rápido prácticamente como aparece, pues no pueden investigarlo, ¿no? Y entonces es una anomalía muy seria, ¿no? A partir de la cual pues no puedo contestar este problema con las herramientas que tengo, ¿no? Entonces es solo como un ejemplo, ¿no? De cosas que van apareciendo ahí.
Back at NIH, Gallo's team was also hunting for a retrovirus in tissue samples from AIDS patients. They based their procedure on the assumption that it would behave like HTLV.
I think in his mind, he was really convinced at that time that it was somewhere HTLV related. I think it is the reason why when they were looking for the virus, they were waiting for several weeks. And it's a reason also why they could not detect the virus, because the virus was killing the cells. So looking after several weeks, it was no more virus in culture.
In Paris, they had compared what they had found with Dr. Gallo's virus. The French were convinced the two viruses were different.
But the first sign that our virus was different from his virus. And I think that was the most exciting time. I went home and I told my husband, well, I think we have really something very important in the lab.
It was important to know whether it was a known retrovirus or a new retrovirus. So the second excitement came when we got some results showing that it was really a new retrovirus.
Dr. Montagnier was in a hurry to publish his discovery. Bob Gallo agreed to review his article. But Dr. Gallo added something extra in the summary. He said that the French virus was probably in the HTLV family. In other words, not a new virus. The French findings, when they appeared in the May edition of Science magazine, were by no means conclusive and largely ignored. Gallo also had published 2 impressive papers around the same time. He continued to push the connection with HTLV.
You couldn't call that virus the AIDS virus in 1983, but it was novel. It was a new kind of virus. Whether or not it belonged to the HTLV family or not doesn't take any credit away or give more credit. And the data in that paper, it's easy to summarize what they published. Certainly to me, any logical person in the field would have concluded this is not going to be a whole new family of retroviruses.
September 1983. The next round in the retrovirus battle was about to begin in New York. The top scientists were gathered at the Cold Spring Harbor Conference Center to discuss the latest AIDS research advances. Gallo and Montagnier smiled for the camera, yet their professional relationship was about to explode. Dr. Montagnier had arrived with fresh evidence supporting his discovery of a new retrovirus. He was expecting his audience to get very excited. Personalities got in the way. Gallo's style overwhelmed the quiet doctor from France.
There was not flamboyant like Gallo, and when I say something in lecture, in meetings, people do not listen to me that they are listening to him. I think I made some progress on that. But it's clear also that the fact we were from Europe, from France, reduced the impact of our discoveries.
In the audience was the CDC's Dr. Don Francis, one of the scientists working toward controlling the spread of AIDS.
Bob Gallo stood up afterwards and just basted him for having nothing. He said that's nonsense. And he was really very, very abusive of Dr. Montagnier in his acid tongue, clearly fluid in English. He kind of stunned poor Montagnier. It was not a fair battle. Luc Montagnier is very straight and cautious, very conservative. Standing up to Bob Gallo is a difficult thing to do. He is a huge force in the field because of the money that surrounded the National Cancer Institute. It's really remarkable work on human retrovirology. And so to look to him for leadership was appropriate.
In Gallo's lab, efforts intensified to prove that the virus was indeed HTLV. Later, some claimed this delayed the development of the vital blood screening test.
That's an interesting question of whether or not my enthusiasm for the first human retroviruses delayed or distorted our research. Without the HTLV research, it's doubtful that any of us would be on this television program now, talking about the quick progress in those early years. There is no question that the early work on HCLVs set up the notion, one, to look for a retrovirus, two, helped, wasn't the sole thing,